Hello there. I'm Scotty. You're not. Welcome back to the Pick 10 90's. Dude. Pick 10 90's. Dude. Excuse me, just had lunch. Hot dog breath. Anyway, we are looking at the 1992 erotic thriller Basic Instinct, starring Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone. Yes, this is the first time watch for me. So, erotic thrillers are iffy for me. Like, I don't mind sex scene. I've watched porn before. Okay, I admit that. But there's something weird about sex scenes in movies that they just kind of... Some of them are okay, but with erotic thrillers, they have to do they film the sex scenes in a certain way. Like, Fatal Attraction had interesting sex scenes. The ones in here, I swear they're gonna fuck themselves to death. I don't know what it looks like. Just the way that they act out the orgasm, you think they had a heart attack. They're like, like he's gonna die or something. I'm like Michael Douglas in one of the sex scenes, he does that. I'm like, is he coming or dying? Is he having a heart attack? What is? I don't know. The sex scenes in this is just weird. I mean, can't say they don't work. Awkward sitting in a van, watching this, going. I sit way in the back, so I didn't know no one was gonna see it anyway. But I was like, and then when we went to break, we had a church during break, and I'm sitting there watching it. Thankfully, there was no sex scenes during that, or I'd have been like, sorry. But yeah. So the plot here is a rock star is murdered, and the prime suspect is the woman he was sleeping with at the time, Catherine Trammell, who is also a writer who wrote a book about a rock star that got murdered years before this rock star got murdered. Okay? And so, Michael Douglas plays a detective named Nick Curran, who is divorced. He's sleeping with his therapist. He is recently free of alcohol and drugs, and he's recently sober after an incident where he he misjudged the situation because he was high on cocaine at the time and killed two. What were they? I forgot what they were. But they were volunteers or Boy Scouts or something. He thought they were suspects, and he got them instead. That plotline really goes nowhere except for to show that he's unhinged and that he's had some problems. Like, him being a cop, really, like, they get rid of that maybe 45 minutes into the movie. He loses his badge about that much, and he starts sleeping with Catherine, who is very obviously the killer in this. And, like, okay, so I'm going to say this right now. I don't know why my hand's on there, but right now. I liked this movie until the end. The ending where it sort of revealed who the killer is, and then they flip the switch and say, oh, maybe it's this person. I would have liked a more concrete ending. And I think the reason why they didn't do the ending they should have, which I'll talk about when I get to it, is because it would have been too much like Fatal Attraction, which Michael Douglas was also in. So I think they had to go with a different ending, because if they just ended it the way that I would want it to end and how I think it should have ended, they probably would have been comparisons to it. Down to the fact that Michael Douglas is sleeping with a woman who's, has homicidal tendencies, to be sure. But he's not, having an affair, like cheating on anyone. He's sleeping with his therapist, but so the case begins to unravel some stuff. It's revealed that the therapist, Beth, and Catherine went to the same college, but they say they don't even really know each other. Not really, you know what I mean? Which is not entirely true. We'll get to that. But the more that Nick gets in bed, literally, with Catherine, the worse. Like, there's a scene. He's a cop, right? Even without his badge, he's still been a cop. And she's like, I'm going to be at this club at midnight. So he goes there. He walks into the men's room where, like, there's men and women in there. And they're just doing cocaine in the bathroom. And I'm like, wow. You wouldn't see this nowadays. You wouldn't. The 80s and 90s, man. I was thinking 80s. I'm like, no, this is 90s. Duh. 1992. But, when a decade starts, stuff from the previous decade is still going. Like, really, a decade is not defined until you get at least halfway through. Like, the 90s was still half 80s until 95, and that's when the 90s got its real identity. And then even in the 2000s, there were still some remnants of the 90s and the early 2000s as well. And then even the early 80s had some remnants of 70s. There was still some kind of disco music going on. And then it gradually changed into the 80s, punk rock and the hair. Like, in my opinion, 90s weren't full 90s until like 94 when grunge came in and really embodied the 90s, But I'm saying that because, like, doing cocaine in bathrooms is a very 80s thing. Look at the movie American Psycho. Takes place in the 80s, and they're finding bathrooms to do cocaine in, and this is very much that. So it's like a continuation that had fully gone out. Like, Dare wasn't a thing, going around to kids not to do drugs and stuff like that. Like, and this guy, okay, so it's kind of hard to kind of get on the bandwagon of Nick. He's this guy, he's struggling alcoholic, he's dealt with all this stuff, and you want to root for him, but then he starts drinking again and smoking again. He has this line where he's like, I quit smoking, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna end up smoking. There's only two reasons why they would say that. One, if they're gonna end up smoking by the end of the film, which he does many times, or two, if this is a sequel to a film and they have to explain why he smoked in the first one but not in this one, which there are movies that do that, like Ghostbusters and Tremors 2, Ghostbusters 2, they don't explain why they're not smoking, they just aren't. And in Ghostbusters 2, Fred Ward's character, Earl, he's like, well, Jesus, Bert, I quit smoking. What else you want me to do? I give up smoking. What else you want me to do? The whole thing. So, but he does end up smoking. He doesn't go full into the cocaine. At least we don't see him do it. And I am going off of the director's cut because that's what I had on the DVD, and they had both versions on Paramount Plus, so I watched the director's cut. So it would be this one. So I didn't want to watch the theatrical and then later put this in and be like, why is it different? You know what I mean? I don't even know what's different. More sex scenes? And one thing that kind of bugged me is there's barely any recognizable actors in this. You have Michael Douglas, you have Sharon Stone, and there's only 3 other recognizable actors, and they're all cameos. Wayne Knight and Mitch Pileggi both show up in interrogation scenes. Wayne Knight's in one, Pileggi's in the other one, and then Jack McGee shows up towards the end of the film for a cameo. Talk about who was a cop from another precinct. Talks about one of the other cops that died. So during his investigation, a couple people die. First is Nilsson, the detective who he has a problem with, which is how he loses his badge. He goes off on Nilsson because of files that were given. There's information on him that was given. There was psych evaluation files that were given him, and that he supposedly gave to Catherine. And then he dies after the altercation. He's shot in the head after the altercation with the 38. And so, and they're like, well, it's too easy. He's like, why would I shoot him after having a confrontation with him? Wouldn't that be too much, too obvious? And they said the same thing to Catherine earlier during her very, what's the word I'm searching for here? Very infamous interrogation scene where she does the leg lift and you see meow. Yes, I was right up against the TV for investigative purposes. Just strictly for review purposes. I had to make sure that you could actually see it, because you never know. But I just had to make sure. Purely business, nothing else. Just purely business. I wanted to see if you could actually see it. That's why I did it. I was like, because you see the lag, it happens so fast. So I had to make sure. I'm like, do you actually see it, or is it one of those Mandela effect things? You see it very quickly. You see it. Oh, you see it. You know what else you see? Michael Douglas's ass. That's what you see. Why? After their sex scene, he's walking around her house, and his ass is just sticking out. The other murder is Roxy, someone who appears to be obsessed with Catherine and ends up dead. Well, it's a car crash that she causes, chasing after him, using Catherine's car, though. We never really find out, that's the thing about the ending. There's no real conclusion. We're just supposed to believe what they tell us. They keep going, but then they give us something else, and they're like, okay, but then what actually happened here? You know what I mean? So it is revealed that Beth, the therapist, does know Catherine. They slept together, which I didn't realize they would do stuff like this in movies back in the 90s. If you did it now, people would call it woke. But David, I watching older movies, I start to realize there was a lot more of LGBT stuff in cinema, and it's only after this Me Too movement that people, when it's put in movies, it's just like, no. The only problem I have, and I said it before, is that you're using minorities and LGBT people to make money by advertising them in your movies. That's the only thing I don't like, is that you're trying to profit off this. And that's what I don't like. If you're going to put it in there, put it in there. I bet you in 1992 when this premiered, they didn't say, hey, Basic Instinct, Sharon Stone plays a lesbian. Or Sharon Stone plays a bisexual. No, they just said, hey. Probably said, hey, Sharon Stone's tits are in this. Probably not the people promoting the movie, but maybe some of the people showing the movie. Like, hey, you gotta watch this. See Sharon Stone's tits in this. Naked scene. And then I pranked them. Like, here, watch. And it's Michael Douglas' ass. Oh, sorry. Wrong scene. Just to fuck with them. But, yeah, so Roxy dies, and then it's... So she's writing this new novel about a police detective that you say is going to get killed at the end of the book. So, this is where I have a problem with it. So, he and his partner Gus are investigating this together. Everything is pointed to Beth so far, because he talks about an Elizabeth. She talks about there was an Elizabeth Hubbard, something with an H, but it starts with an O, and then it says no, it's with an H, And so he looks it up, because the first time she said it's with the no, so he tries to search, doesn't find anything, and then with the H, it comes up that it was Beth. And she has a different last name because she got married and she kept that last name, I guess. And so everything is pointing to Beth at this point. So Nick goes to visit Catherine, and Catherine basically like, my book is finished, I don't need you anymore. That sort of thing. Like, she's only using him for sex while she was doing her book. Her book is finished. And he's read this part where a detective dies in an elevator, and the detective's partner dies in an elevator, and the detective has to go in to try to rescue him, but he's too late. So they go to Elizabeth's office building, and one of the stupidest reasons, Nick doesn't go in with Gus, because they, oh hey, you're not a cop right now, buddy. I gotta go in myself. I can't bring you in there. Fuck that. Go in with him. I'm sorry, but no. Why? This is one of the stupidest. Like, he makes a lot of stupid decisions. Like, keep sleeping with Catherine, for instance. But he does not go in, and then he realizes, he starts to think about the book. He's like, shit. So he runs in, but Gus gets stabbed with an ice pick. And then Nick finds him, and then Catherine comes out of her office just in time to see this, and he's like, don't move. He's got a gun on her. Tourists, that's what they were. He killed 2 tourists when he was high on coke. So that plays into this, because at least it shut off. So he's got a gun on her, and she's like, Nick, and she's going in her pocket to pull out something, and he shoots her. And as she dies, she says, I loved you. She dies. And he goes into the pocket because he thinks it's a gun, and it's her keys, which they heavily focused on earlier when she showed up at his apartment. And he asked for his key back. They show she's got a Bart Simpson keychain. 92, people. And they were really popular. And this was 20th Century Fox, so same studio. But, so yeah, I'm like, that's going to play into something later. And it does. Because he pulls the keys out, and you see that keychain. Oh, it's her keys. And so they find the ice pick, a blonde wig, and a trench coat in the stairwell. And they find a lot of damning evidence at Beth's apartment. So they just have completely thrown out Catherine, who has been the suspect for the entire film, and is very, very suspect. In every single way, they've thrown her out because they have evidence. And fucking movie cops. Nope, we got all the evidence right here. Don't need to investigate any further. Nick, wake up. I mean, she wasn't armed. She had no gun. There just so happened to be stuff in the stairwell. It's all too convenient. He's a cop. He's supposed to be smarter than this. But no, he just accepts it. Then he goes home, and who's there? Catherine is there, waiting for him. And right away, I'm not... Really? You're gonna vacuum when I'm in the middle of fucking... Hold on a minute. Since I decided to vacuum in the middle of my review, we are in the bedroom right now. Okay, so where was I? So, Catherine is there. And he's just accepted this. And I would have been like... She's like, I heard what happened. And there's a pause. On the TV. Because before, when Nelson is killed, she's right there. She's like, I heard what happened. How could you have heard? I have my ways, you know. But it's never really answered. And then here she's like, I heard what happened on the TV. And it's like, okay. And then she's like, I don't want to lose you. And I'd be like, bitch, no. This is too coincidental. My therapist is blamed for the murders. What happened was exactly in her fucking book. But this dude is too concentrated on poontang to even, like, every time these two get in a room, they fucking, okay? It's ridiculous. And sure enough, they go at it again in another sex scene. We get to see his ass. And then we get this tease, like she's going over the bed to grab something. And nope, nothing, it's her arm. And they start going again. But then the camera, they start making love, and then it fades out like it's the end. But then it fades back in. And then the camera pans down under the bed. And there's an ice pick. And then the movie ends. And you go, well, no shit, she's the killer. If you don't believe she's the killer, you're a fucking idiot. Now, had they not panned down, it would have been a little more of a mystery. Now, was it really Catherine? Or was it actually Beth? Then again, it's not really a surprise when there's a sequel called Basic Instinct 2 and Sharon Stone comes back. Obviously, she's the killer. So if you went into this knowing there was a sequel with Sharon Stone coming back, then yeah, probably it wasn't a mystery to you. You knew it was going to be her. Like, I went in knowing it was her, and they play around the mystery that it could be Beth, which, honestly, I wish I went in not knowing, but it's so infamous, that scene, the interrogation scene, and it's just so well known, and there's even a sequel, that you can't go in unless you're, like, my son turned 18 or 21, and he'd not seen anything, and I show it to him, and he probably, there's a lot of boobs in this movie, Dad. But I'd be like, yeah, you're 21, son. You're old enough. But just be like, it'd be weird to watch something with your son, even if he's of age, like 21. Even if he's 25 or 30, and you're sitting there at 60 years old. I don't want to think about that, but it'd just be weird to watch anything with nudity with your child and mother. It's like you're watching, it'd be like if I was watching this and my mother walked in. She'd be like, what are you watching? It's a movie. It's Michael Douglas, Sharon Stone. It's a movie. I swear, it's not porn. I wouldn't watch that when you were around. I don't know. It's just, it's one of those things where those memes where it's like the movie when no one's around and it's just talking and boring stuff. Even when my mom walks in and there's nudity popping up. So, yeah, it would be weird like that. But what did I get it at for? I would say this movie is pretty good. Now, the ending, how I would have done it. After what happened with Catherine, with the whole, not Catherine, with Gus's death, and then what happens with Beth. One, they just let Nick walk. He should be on probation right now, right? He went nuts. He was a suspect in Nilsson's death, but not anymore. But still, he's known for doing things. He shot Beth, who was unarmed, just like those tourists, and they're not going to investigate him. They're just going to let him go home. But here's what should have happened. When he gets back, she's already there, and he's figured it out. He's like, no. And she tries to do something, but he pushes her away, and then she realizes he's figured it out, and when she tries to kill him, it's revealed he's brought other cops with him. And they're forced to shoot her, kill her, whatever. It's similar to Fatal Attraction, which is why they went to this kind of route, the kind of mysterious, is she really the killer type thing. But like I said, in this day and age, when you know there's a sequel, it's not really a surprise. It's not really a mystery. So, I believe they're done vacuuming. I don't hear anything now. So, we gotta go back in there anyway so I can roll the dice. Alright, back in the kitchen review area. 3? No, it was the last time, or was it 2? We shall see. Last one. Sleeping with the Enemy. Another erotic thriller back to back. Get it? That's after I get my taxes done today. So, what are your thoughts on Basic Instinct? Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.